Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. Life had a way of settling into patterns, some comforting, others mundane. I often woke before dawn, savoring the stillness before the rest of the house stirred. In those early hours, with only the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards for company, I felt most at ease. It was my time to reflect, to remember why I had chosen this life, with its moments of joy interspersed with the weight of responsibilities. Katie and I met in college, a whirlwind romance that felt too good to be true. She was all fire and determination, the kind of woman who made you feel like you could conquer anything with her at your side. We married young, and within a few years Jill and Jenny came along. Our daughters were the heart of our world, bright, vivacious, and occasionally maddening in the way only teenage girls could be. As the years passed, our family found its rhythm. Katie managed the logistics of our lives, ensuring that birthdays were celebrated and dentist appointments weren't missed. Meanwhile, I found joy in the simpler things, fixing the leaky faucet, organizing Sunday BBQs, and being the constant presence my daughters could rely on. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Father's Day was one of those rare occasions when the spotlight turned to me. Katie and the girls made sure I felt special, even if the celebrations were modest. A homemade breakfast, a heartfelt card, and a few hours together. It was all I ever wanted. I never needed grand gestures. The love we shared was enough. Yet beneath the surface of our seemingly happy life, I'd started to notice subtle shifts. Katie worked later, smiled less, and seemed distant, even in her moments of presence. At the time, I dismissed these changes as the inevitable result of a busy life. In hindsight, those moments were signposts I chose to ignore, guiding me toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. Last year's Father's Day began in the same unremarkable way as every other. I rose early, quietly leaving the house to avoid waking Katie and the girls, who would undoubtedly sleep in. Mother's Day was my time to shine. I would whip up a hearty breakfast, curate a light midday snack of wine, cheese, and fruits, and end the day with a steak dinner paired with a rich Cabernet. When the girls were younger, they'd eagerly help me in the kitchen, though as teenagers, they left most of the work to me. In contrast, Father's Day meant Katie taking over the breakfast duties, a gesture I appreciated even if I often skipped the meal altogether, preferring to keep my appetite in check for later. That year, I waited for her to wake up so she could make me breakfast, something she didn't know I usually skipped in the mornings to avoid being too hungry. She kissed me, wished me a happy Father's Day, and immediately went to prepare breakfast. We had lunch at a quirky, Doctor Who-themed cafe, which turned out to be a fun way to spend the day. My wife is extremely organized, always keeping track of the calendar, from holidays to the kids' schedules. She rarely misses anything, except when I forget something. The following year, she pointed out while going over the calendar that my birthday happened to fall on Father's Day. I wasn't shocked, joking that I hoped I wasn't going to get shortchanged on presents. She laughed and promised something extra special. I couldn't help but wonder if that meant more than the usual birthday and Father's Day treat, a routine that had developed between us over time. She would always start it during foreplay and only finish it on those 2 days. But as the weeks passed leading up to that year's Father's Day, I noticed a change in my wife's behavior. She started working late, snapping at the kids and me, and dressing up more often. She wore makeup, scarves, and low-cut shirts at work, things she had never done before. The Friday before my birthday, she put on a short skirt, stockings, and heels. She told me she was going out with some coworkers, which was unusual since we normally spent Friday nights together. I was surprised and asked if I had forgotten any plans, but she claimed it was a last-minute thing. Her response felt off, though. I was taken back when she rushed out the door, far more dressed up than usual. Something didn't sit right with me, but I couldn't figure out why. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it lingered. She came home just before midnight, her hair in a simple ponytail instead of the styled look she had earlier. She walked past me without saying anything and went upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the shower running. I couldn't help but wonder what she had done that required a shower before bed. She didn't come downstairs to say goodnight, and that's when I realized something was off. The next morning, I left for work early, but there was no kiss goodbye, something that had never happened. I was unsettled, but I tried to focus on the day ahead. At the store, Missy, the morning barista, was waiting by the entrance. She was a pretty redhead with striking blue eyes, and even though I was happily married, I couldn't help but notice her. "Hey, Bill," she greeted me. "Good morning, Missy," I replied. She could tell something was bothering me and asked if I was okay. I told her I had a lot on my mind. She offered me a coffee, which I gratefully accepted. As she prepped for the morning rush, I checked in with my team. I made sure to visit every department, even though my managers were competent. I wanted to build strong relationships with the staff. My last stop was the coffee shop, where Missy had my usual black coffee ready. "Here you go," she said with a smile. "Thanks, Missy," I said, leaving a $2 tip. She tried to refuse, but I insisted. "I can't risk a complaint," I joked, referring to how even the smallest issue could lead to a corporate call. She laughed it off, and I went back to work, trying to focus on the day ahead. The day was mostly uneventful, with the most memorable part being when an elderly woman was caught trying to steal cat and bird food. It was a distraction I needed, something to keep my mind off the strange situation with my wife. When I got home, my wife and daughters were getting ready to leave for a concert, a plan they'd made weeks ago, but which I had completely forgotten about. My daughter gave me a kiss goodbye, but my wife didn't acknowledge me at all. I still couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, and I couldn't stop thinking about the odd events from the night before. Later that evening, I tried to dig a little deeper. I checked her email, but there was nothing suspicious. She had a cell phone, so I couldn't check her messages or call logs. I even peeked in the laundry hamper, but since it was Saturday, she'd already done the laundry. I didn't find anything. And after watching a movie, I went to bed feeling just as uneasy as before. On the morning of my birthday and Father's Day, I went through my usual routine. Coffee, toast, and some quiet time outside enjoying the nice weather. When I went inside to refill my coffee, I was surprised to see my wife and daughters already up and packing lunch. "We're going to the beach," my daughter Jill said. I went upstairs to get dressed, but as I was putting on my shirt, I heard my daughter Jenny yell, "Bye, Daddy," and the door slammed. I looked out the window as they drove off. It hit me. They had remembered my birthday, but I never expected Katie to forget. Standing in the living room, I heard my phone ring. It was my mom. "Happy birthday and Father's Day, Billy," she greeted me. "Thanks, Mom," I replied. "Kathy has big plans for you today," she said. "No, she took the girls to the beach a while ago," I explained. "That's unusual. She doesn't usually do that," Mom remarked. "I don't know. She's been acting strange lately," I confessed. "Don't worry. She's probably got something planned for later." "Love you, Billy," Mom reassured me. "Love you too, Mom," I said. I was still trying to wrap my head around everything my mom had said when the phone rang again. It was Ann, my assistant. "Bill, we had an issue at the shop," Ann said. "What's going on?" I asked, already feeling anxious. "Missy was pushed on the stairs by a customer. She fell and might have broken her arm," Ann explained. "Is she okay?" I asked, the concern rising in my chest. "They took her to the hospital for x-rays," Ann replied. "Damn, that's awful. Is everything covered on your shift?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Yeah, we're all good here, just didn't want to catch you off guard," Ann said. "Thanks for the heads up, Ann." I hung up, my mind still reeling from everything that had been happening. I assumed my wife and kids wouldn't be back anytime soon, so I decided to go out for breakfast on my own. I headed to IHOP, but as soon as I walked in, I knew I'd made a mistake. The place was packed with families celebrating Father's Day, and it hit me hard. I left almost immediately and ended up at McDonald's instead. Eating alone in the park, I thought about the lake I used to take my daughters to when they were younger. They had loved it back then, but as they grew up, I started to feel like a stranger to them. By 1 p.m., I still hadn't heard a word from my wife. I figured dinner plans were off, and I found myself at the Doctor Who cafe, posting a picture of my lunch online. As usual, I got a bunch of likes and Father's Day wishes, but then I noticed a comment from my mother-in-law. She assumed I was with my family at the beach, since Katie had posted a few pictures from there. I finished my sandwich and decided to head to a nearby sports bar to unwind with a beer. The place was packed, so I slipped next door into a cigar lounge, treating myself to an expensive $60 cigar. "Happy birthday to me," I muttered as I lit it. I sat at the bar, turned on the Sox game, and a couple of guys invited me to join their card game. "I'm Bill," I said, introducing myself. "I'm Lance, and this is my brother Jerry," the older man said. They finished their hand and dealt me in. "Help yourself to a drink, Bill," Lance offered, grabbing a cooler. I grabbed a Miller Lite, and Jerry asked, "No kids today, or is the ex with someone new?" I felt a wave of discomfort. My wife and daughters are at the beach. They didn't even remember today. "That's rough," Lance said. "My boys are both in the military. My daughter's in California," Jerry added. "My grandson just turned 2. I'm visiting next week." "Sounds nice," I replied, forcing a smile. "When my girls were younger, I used to take them to the lake." They loved it. They nodded, and after a few minutes, the conversation veered back to my situation. "Do you think she really forgot? Or is she just avoiding you?" Jerry asked. I explained the changes I had noticed in my wife recently, and they exchanged looks. "She's cheating on you?" Lance asked bluntly. The question hit me like a slap in the face, and I tried to brush it off, but the idea started to fester. I didn't want to believe it, but it was hard to ignore. Lance leaned forward. "Look, I've been there. The dressing up, the late nights out. My wife did the same thing, and when I found out I divorced her, it was the biggest mistake I ever made." I frowned, not understanding. "How is divorcing her a mistake?" "If she cheats, that's it." Lance sighed, his voice softer now. "I was paying alimony for years. I was broke. I missed her every damn day. Eventually we got back together, and we're happy now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If she's cheating, there's no way I could forgive that. I couldn't stay with someone who betrayed me like that. Lance shook his head. "You don't get second chances at love when you're our age, Bill. If you still love her, you'll find a way to forgive." I was still processing it all as I excused myself. "Thanks, Lance. I'll think about it," I said, though deep down I couldn't imagine ever forgiving her. I shook their hands and left. When I got back to my phone, I saw more posts from Katie and the girls at the beach. My heart sank. Forget it, I told myself. Stop being the sufferer. It stung that my wife had forgotten my birthday and Father's Day, but deeper than that, I had a growing suspicion that she'd been seeing someone else for weeks. I needed to focus on something else, so I decided to go to dinner at my favorite steakhouse. I knew there'd be a wait, but I didn't care. I showered, put on a jacket, and went out to treat myself. I arrived and ordered a glass of champagne. The older man next to me eyed my drink before ordering a martini. The bartender refilled my glass, and the man asked, "Celebrating alone, or am I taking someone's place?" "No, I'm alone," I replied. He nodded. "My wife's helping my daughter. She broke her arm today. You don't expect your grown kids to still get hurt." I chuckled. "Looks like I'm going solo for a while." My wife's caught up with other things. Then a little girl ran up to him, shouting, "Grandpa." She jumped into his lap, hugging him tightly. A few moments later, I heard someone call my name. "Bill." I turned and saw Missy, with a woman who looked a lot like her. I assumed it was her mother. "How's your arm, Missy?" I asked, trying to mask my discomfort. "It's fine," she said, smiling faintly. The painkillers are helping, but it hurt like hell when they set the bone. Missy introduced me to her parents, Jack and Mary, and her little girl, Mia. "Where's your wife, Bill?" Missy asked innocently. "I'm not sure," I answered. "She took the girls to the beach this morning, and I haven't heard from them since." "Really? On Father's Day?" Missy said, surprised. "That's pretty rough." Mary looked shocked. "She blew you off on your day. What kind of person does that?" I shrugged, not wanting to go into the details. "Forget about her," Mary said, dismissing it. "You're with us now." I understood Jack's earlier comment about red rage. "I don't think I can," I said. "Come on, don't let it get to you," Jack said with a grin. "It's your day too." "But it's your day, Jack," I protested. "I don't want to crash your celebration." "Nonsense," he said. "This is our day too." "Grandpa," Mia called, cutting our conversation short. "I know, Pumpkin," Jack said with a chuckle. "I'll be in trouble later." "Daddy," Mia said, looking up at him. Jack winked at me as their buzzer went off. "Pay up, Bill, and meet us at the table." I slipped a $20 bill on the counter, following them to their table. "I'm sorry, Bill," Missy said as I sat down. "My parents can be a bit much." "No worries," I replied. "It's better than being alone." During dinner, we swapped stories about our kids, and Mia laughed at the funny anecdotes about her mom's childhood. As my phone buzzed, I saw it was Katie calling. I let it ring, leaving the phone face down on the table. "Your wife?" Mary asked, noticing. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It's more than you think, isn't it?" Missy asked gently. "I think so," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "but I don't have any proof." "Everyone makes mistakes," Mary said, glancing at Jack. "Maybe you can forgive her." Missy shot her a look, but I didn't comment. I signaled the waiter to bring the check and paid for the meal. "Thanks for inviting me, Bill," Jack said with a handshake. "It was a pleasure," I said. "Happy Father's Day." When I left, I still didn't have the proof I needed, but I felt unsettled. 2 people had suggested I might be able to forgive her. I wasn't sure I could. When I got home, the girls ran up to me, apologizing for forgetting Father's Day. "Don't worry about it," I said, hugging them both. "I didn't expect you to remember." Jill ran inside to tell Katie, "It's your birthday today. We didn't know. I'm so sorry." She broke down in tears, pressing her face into my chest. "You must hate us." "No, sweetheart, I love you both," I reassured her. "Your mom suggested the beach, and we didn't think." She trailed off. "It's fine," I said. "Don't worry about it." I didn't mention the anger I felt toward their mother. That was something I'd deal with later. "Let's go inside," I said softly. After changing into something comfortable, I came downstairs to find Katie sitting alone, crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but I didn't respond. I walked outside to the deck, cracked open a beer, and tried to focus on something other than her tears. Then I heard the sliding door open. "Bill." What's his name?" I interrupted, not looking at her. She stayed silent. "Bill, what's his name?" "The man you were with on Friday." My anger surged as soon as she didn't deny it. That was it. I knew I was going to need a divorce lawyer. Nearly 2 decades of marriage gone. I had been such a fool. As my mind raced, I couldn't help but wonder how long this had been going on. Whether he was the first, or if I even knew him. Betrayal has a way of making everything spiral out of control. I made up my mind. I'd request a paternity test for the girls during the divorce. It would give me some peace of mind, and force Katie to face the consequences of her actions. The rest of the night was spent scouring divorce laws online, and by the time I drifted to sleep, it was on the couch. That's how I spent my birthday. I woke early to find Katie still in bed, curled up around her pillow, looking peaceful. She looked beautiful, even though she wasn't mine anymore. I grabbed what I needed, showered quickly, and slipped out of the room without waking her. As I walked down the hallway, Jill was standing there waiting. "How bad is it, Dad?" she asked, her face filled with concern. I let out a heavy sigh. This is as bad as it gets. Can you forgive her? It's just one day, right? Jill pressed. She didn't just forget my birthday or Father's Day, I answered, my voice breaking. She cheated on me. Jill shook her head in disbelief, her voice trembling. No, Daddy, she wouldn't do that. She did, but I won't forgive it, I said firmly. Jill paused, then spoke slowly as if trying to reason with me. Think about it. The last few weeks she's been different. Friday, after getting a tan and doing her hair, she dressed up like she was going to a club. That wasn't for me. I nodded, my frustration growing. She barely spoke to me all weekend. She was clearly avoiding me. Jill seemed to soften, her voice quiet but insistent. When has she ever taken you to the beach without me? What if it wasn't an affair, just a mistake? Can't you find a way to forgive her? I shook my head. I don't think I can. Look at her actions. She hasn't treated me like she loves me for weeks. When Grandma asked why she didn't call Grandpa on Father's Day, she screamed, "No," so loud we thought he was having a heart attack. Dad, he's fine, Jill said quickly, but Mom was sobbing. She kept saying she loved you over and over. Jenny even wanted to call an ambulance for her. I don't know what to say, Jill. You can't cheat and still claim to love someone. It's selfish, not love. She chose him over me. Jill hugged me tight, tears streaming down her face. Please don't divorce her. I need to go to work. We'll talk more later. I turned to leave. Jill walked into Jenny's room. I'll tell her what we talked about. No more secrets. I couldn't help but wonder how long we'd still be a family. Kathy had been too busy to reach out, so I kept my composure. The only thing out of the ordinary was filling out Missy's accident paperwork. She was going to be compensated for her vacation, and I hoped she wasn't too stressed out. I didn't know much about her personal life, only that she wasn't married. Missy came by to sign the forms. She couldn't use her left hand, so I filled out the accident report for her. How's everything at home? She asked, her voice cautious. Not good, I replied. She didn't deny the affair when I confronted her. Damn, Bill, I'm sorry, Missy said. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I get it. My ex cheated on me while I was pregnant. I kicked him out before our daughter was born. Your mom said she forgave Kathy last night. It felt strange, I said. She looked right at your dad when she said it. Yeah, I noticed. Makes me wonder if one of them was cheating too, Missy mused. I'm sorry, I muttered. You don't have to be, Missy replied. They seem happy enough, so they're free to do what they want. I don't trust liars, I said flatly. After work, Kathy wasn't home. I assumed she was with her new guy, and it pissed me off. I drove to her grocery store and saw her car in the parking lot. To my surprise, she was sitting in the car with a younger man. When she saw me, she yelled, "No," and jumped out of the car, but I didn't stick around. If she wanted to cheat, let her, she could have him. I was done. I went home, packed a bag, and planned to stay at a hotel until I found a place of my own. Before I could leave, Jenny and Jill came running to me, crying and begging me to stay. Sorry, girls, but your mom was about to cheat on me. I saw her with a guy in her car. Dad, this has to be a mistake, Jenny said, desperation in her voice. I saw what I saw. She was with a man after work. Why else would she be with him in the car? Please, Daddy, don't break up the family, Jenny sobbed. Your mom did this, not me, I said, hugging them both tightly. I love you both. I'll stay in touch every day. I whispered, kissing their cheeks. I left them crying in the bedroom and went to the garage. As I pulled out, Kathy nearly ran me off the road, speeding away. I shook my head, but kept driving. The following week was a nightmare. Kathy bombarded me with calls every hour for 3 straight days. She must have taken vacation since she couldn't call from work. Her voicemails were desperate, but I deleted them all. After a few days, my mother, mother-in-law, both daughters, and Kathy's sister all begged me to talk to her. They kept telling me it wasn't as bad as I thought, but when I asked them if she cheated, they went silent. They all knew, but none of them would admit it. I stopped answering calls altogether. I told the girls I talked to them, but not about their mother. They didn't believe me until I hung up twice. By the end of the week, I'd met with a lawyer. I wanted a 50-50th split of the house, with her staying there until the girls moved out, then selling it. The lawyer said I could get more, but I didn't care. The best part, I wouldn't have to pay her alimony. She made enough money to support herself, and I wasn't about to fund her relationship with her lover. The problem was, I didn't have concrete proof of the affair. Without that, the judge might classify it as irreconcilable differences. But my lawyer had the divorce papers ready, and I felt a sense of relief. No forced mediation, no long battle, just a fair split. Kathy fought back once she received the divorce papers, claiming she only slept with one man, the Friday before my birthday. Her family turned on me again, saying I was the bad guy for not letting her explain, as if any explanation would make it okay. My mother called me weak for not fighting for my marriage. My mother-in-law said I'd broken my vows too. My daughters begged me to stay, saying the divorce would scar them. It was unreal. I hadn't done anything wrong, yet somehow I was being blamed. I even asked my daughters for DNA tests, telling them it was a court order. Kathy sent me a letter, admitting to the affair, but trying to downplay it, claiming it was just one time with the 21-year-old, and that he was worthless. She also claimed I told the guy to never contact her again after I caught her. It didn't matter. She had cheated. That was enough. And the best part, her letter gave me the evidence I needed. I didn't even need to prove infidelity in court. Despite her resistance, the judge approved the divorce within 60 days, and I was labeled the bad guy. My family stopped speaking to me, but I stood firm. I called my daughters every day, leaving voicemails, but they never picked up. I refused to let them blame me for the silence. On Sundays, I started meeting Missy for coffee. It was a coincidence at first, when I ran into her and Mia at a local cafe. I invited them to join me, and we spent a while talking, with Mia busy playing on my iPad. Missy tried to reassure me that my daughters would eventually come around, even though I feared Kathy's influence might have a stronger pull on them. The following Sunday I saw them again. Missy teased me, asking if I was stalking her. I laughed and told her that I just appreciated the quiet mornings. It wasn't intentional, but we ended up meeting each week. Her company was easy to enjoy, and Mia's energy was a welcome distraction. The day my divorce was finalized, I went to the house where I'd spent almost 2 decades with Kathy. She answered the door, her face blotchy from crying. Without saying a word, she gestured for me to come inside. "Are the girls home?" I asked. "They're at the school play," Kathy replied, her voice breaking slightly. "I know why you're here," she said, her voice low. "Really?" I shot back, a bitter smirk crossing my face. "You waited until it was too late to stop this, didn't you?" "I knew you'd try to get me back," she admitted, "but I couldn't let that happen." "You broke my heart," I said, my voice flat. "I'm not forgiving you. Bill, it was just one mistake. Why can't you forgive me? Didn't you love me like you used to?" She cried, tears streaming down her face. I laughed darkly. "Did you love me when you were flirting with him? Did you love me when you ignored me on my birthday? If that's love, then I don't know what to say. I never wanted any of this," she sobbed. "I never wanted a wife who cheated on me," I snapped. "But here we are," she gasped, but I cut her off before she could say anything else. "Not only did you break my heart, but you turned my family against me. I'll never forgive you for that." "It's your fault for overreacting," she shot back defensively. I could feel my anger flare again. "If you don't get my family to apologize to me, I'll tell every man you date what you did. I'll make sure no one ever trusts you again. You can't blame me for this," she said, almost pleading. "Oh, really? Did I cheat on you?" I retorted. "You've taught our daughters that cheating is fine. They'll grow up thinking it's acceptable, and I'll be the villain. Well, I'm done." I'm not going to keep playing the fool while you chase some guy's attention. I pulled my hand out of hers. Rot in hell, I spat, turning and walking out as she cried behind me. A few weeks later, Missy stopped by my office. "Got a minute, Bill?" she asked, her voice light. "Sure," I replied, unsure of what was coming next. "Does the company have any rules about dating employees?" she asked, and I immediately understood what she was implying. "I was hoping to ask you out," I admitted, unable to hide my smile. "We do have a strict maltreatment policy," I continued. "If things don't work out, it's on us, not the company." "Good," she said, handing me a folded note with her address and phone number. "Dinner tomorrow night. Mia's coming too." I grinned. "I'm looking forward to it." She left with a light-hearted step, and I couldn't wait for the evening to come. Later, I left a voicemail for my daughters, letting them know I missed them and giving them an update on my life. I knew it might stir things up, but I was ready to move on. Missy seemed like a good place to start. Missy was not only beautiful, but also genuine, and I'd already met her sweet daughter and her warm parents. It felt like a fresh start, something I desperately needed. Then just 15 minutes later, I got a text from Kathy. "I can't believe you're already dating. You're a fool." I laughed to myself, realizing how delusional she was. I wasn't mourning our marriage. At 41, I was still young enough to start over. Missy was in her early 30s, and maybe she'd want more kids down the road. But for now, I knew she was looking for something serious, not just a fling. That evening, I prepared for dinner with Missy. I felt good about myself, fit, successful, and ready for a new chapter. But as I thought about dating again, I realized how much things had changed. Dating was different when you weren't married anymore. Back then, everything had been so easy. I even found myself worrying about how to please a new partner, but I shook off the anxiety. I was ready to move forward, even if it would be awkward at first. With a bottle of wine, a bouquet of flowers, and a stuffed bear for Mia, I headed to Missy's house. I figured it wouldn't hurt to win her daughter over too. When Missy opened the door, I was struck by how beautiful she looked. Her fiery red curls framed her face, and her sundress, just above her knees, showed off her long legs. She was barefoot, her toes painted bright pink. "Do I pass the test?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with humor. "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. She laughed, then took the flowers and wine from me. "Mia's watching TV. Go say hi to her. I'm sure she'll love the bear." As Missy went to the kitchen, I knelt down next to Mia. "Hey there, sweetie. I brought you a bear." Mia hesitated for a moment, then smiled and grabbed the bear, running off to show Missy. The whole scene reminded me of when my own daughters were that age, and a wave of nostalgia hit me hard. "Are you okay?" Missy asked, noticing the wistful look on my face. I forced a smile, just thinking about my daughters when they were little. "Is it really that bad?" she asked softly. "They won't talk to me. Kathy's turned them against me, but I'm not giving up. I leave the messages every day," I explained. "I'm really sorry, Bill," Missy said quietly. "I know it's tough, but I also know they listen to my messages. I told them about our dinner plans, and Katie texted me saying, 'I'm in a hole for moving on so fast.'" "Sorry, is that too fast?" I joked. Missy bit her lip, looking cute and unsure. "Maybe, but I'd be happy to figure it out with you." She smiled and took my hand. "Dinner's ready. Hope you like pasta with meat sauce." "Sounds perfect," I said, grinning. "I also brought garlic bread, so get ready for some serious couch time later." Mia giggled, and I was surprised by how relaxed and open Missy had become. She caught my awkward expression and said, "Bill, we're both adults here. I like you, and I'm not shy about it. You're a great guy, and I think it's worth giving us a shot." "You think I'm hot stuff?" I asked, still processing the shift in our conversation. "Yep," she said with a playful glint in her eyes. "You've been causing quite a stir at the store. You're good-looking, in shape, and smart, And we all know how you feel about loyalty. I sat there feeling better than I had in a long time. So I'm getting in line early, she added with a wink. I squeezed her hand. I like you too. Mia, noticing that she wasn't the center of attention anymore, piped up. Sketty's my favorite. I love Sketty too, I said with a smile. The fattier the better. I spotted the parmesan on the table. You must have really stinky cheese, she laughed. It's not stinky, it's parm. Stinky cheese, I teased, sniffing it dramatically. Wow, this is really stinky. Missy shook her head as I handed the jar to Mia. She sniffed it, shrugged, and then poured it over her pasta. We kept things light, chatting about Mia's preschool and her little circle of friends. Mia had a lot of stories to share, and I enjoyed every second of it. Eventually, Missy became quieter, just watching Mia and me talk. As the evening wore on, she started cleaning up and I offered to help. No need, Missy laughed. She hasn't told you about her favorite TV shows yet. After getting Mia settled for the night, Missy joined me on the couch with a glass of wine. She leaned back, sighing contentedly, and propped her feet up. I love being a mom, she said, her voice soft. But sometimes this right here is the best part of my day. Without thinking, I wrapped my arm around her as she relaxed into me. It's harder with two, I said, thinking of my own experience with the girls. Definitely, she agreed with a knowing smile. After a moment of silence, I asked, do you think your girls will ever come around? I hope so, Missy said thoughtfully. It's still new for them. I'm doing my best. I know it'll take time. She kissed my cheek, her touch gentle. You're a great father, Bill. Don't give up on them. She set her glass down, her expression turning serious. Bill, I've already told you how I feel. I'm not one for games. I want us to keep seeing each other, and that includes being exclusive. I have Mia to think about, and she needs a solid father figure in her life. I need a partner, someone steady. I opened my mouth to respond, but she held up her hand. I know what you're going to say. Usually, this conversation scares the guy off. But I don't think you're that kind of man. I'm giving you the chance to back out. If you're just looking to date around, I'm not your girl. But if you're serious, then I'm here. Wow, I said, surprised. Was that a rehearsed speech? Missy's expression faltered, and I thought for a moment that she might think I was rejecting her. Missy, I said quickly, we've known each other for years. The last few weeks have been great. I'm a family guy, always have been. I don't really know how to be single, and honestly, the idea of dating again scares the hell out of me. If Kathy had been faithful, I'd still be married. I'm not looking for something casual. She smiled and squeezed my hand. You're a good man, Bill. Smart, funny, and you make the best spaghetti I've ever had. She laughed, giving me a playful shove. I'd like to be your girlfriend. Let's make something real out of this, for both of us and for Mia. That night, we didn't sleep together. As tempting as it was, I felt it was better to take things slow. Missy had pretty much laid her feelings on the line, and I wanted to respect that. A few days later, I got a break when a guy applied for a managerial position at the store. I didn't know his name, but I immediately recognized him as the man who'd played a part in ruining my marriage. He was interviewing for the night manager position, and I told Ann to hire him on the spot. On his second night, I was waiting in the parking lot when he arrived for his shift. I slipped a 40-inch TV into the back of his car, a model I knew we had in stock at the store. The next morning, I timed it so I could catch him when his shift ended. I casually walked him to his car, asking about his team, when I noticed the TV in the backseat. Jeff, I said, feigning surprise. Did you buy that TV before your shift? We're not even open yet. No, Bill, that's not mine. He stammered, looking flustered. I don't know how it got there. We need to head back to the store, I said calmly. He tried to insist on checking the security footage, so I played along and took him to the security room. I'd already disabled the cameras, and when he saw the system was down, he panicked. I called the cops, and though he was convicted of a misdemeanor, he didn't serve jail time. He got community service and had to pay a fine, which was more than I'd spent on the TV. The company stepped up security after that, but Jeff never figured out I was behind it all. A week later, Missy and I were standing outside my office. When I pulled up, she greeted me with a kiss. "Are we still on for dinner tonight?" she asked, her voice warm. "Definitely," I replied. "I'm making something special." Just then, Katie's voice came from behind us. "Is that the tramp?" I turned around surprised. "Excuse me." Missy remained calm, facing Katie. "Katie, what do you want?" Katie crossed her arms, frowning. "I've been trying to call you. Did you block my number?" Missy's tone turned sharp. "Yes, after your 30 messages calling me an a-hole for living my life. What do you want?" "I need to talk about the girls and their college plans," Katie said, her expression softening just slightly. "They can go wherever they want. I've already set aside the money for them," I said flatly. "I'd like to be involved, but since you've poisoned them against me, they won't even talk to me," Katie said, her voice rising. "They're just worried you won't pay for their tuition," I said, keeping my cool. "Of course I will. I still love them, despite everything," Katie insisted. "Because you can't keep your legs closed," I shot back. "I lost them in the divorce," Katie retorted. Missy couldn't hold back a laugh, but Katie shot her a glare. "It was one mistake," Katie said, trying to justify herself. "One mistake. You destroyed my family," I said coldly. "You should still be my husband," Katie argued. "Delusional," I muttered. "You ruined everything. If I find out you're seeing anyone else, I'll make sure he knows exactly what kind of woman you are." Katie yelled something as I walked away. Missy had shoved her up against the car, jabbing her finger in Katie's face. "Stay away from my man, witch." You tossed him aside, and I picked him up. I rushed over to pull Missy off her, putting a stop to it. "Let it go, Missy, she's not worth it." Katie was shouting insults as I walked away. "Please, Katie, just go away. It's over, and it's your fault." I left her there, sobbing, and caught up with Missy, who was breathing heavily. She apologized, but I couldn't resist teasing her a bit. "I have to admit, I like it when women fight over me," I grinned. "Does wonders for my ego." We laughed and went inside. Later that night, I got a call from my mom. She barely spoke before the line cut off. I tried calling back, but there was no answer. A quick call to emergency confirmed that paramedics were already on their way. Without thinking, I bolted from the store, telling Anne to cover for me. Missy called after me, but I didn't stop to explain. I ran straight to my car. By the time I reached my mom's house, the ambulance was already leaving. I followed it to the hospital, but when I got to the emergency room, I found out she had passed before they even arrived. She must have fainted while we were on the phone. I sat alone in the waiting room, tears streaming down my face, thinking about the last conversation we had. What was she trying to say? Was it, am I in trouble? Am I having a heart attack? I'll never know. My phone rang. It was Missy. "Hey," I said quietly. "My mom just died." "Oh, Bill, I'm so sorry," Missy replied softly. "Yeah, thanks," I said, my voice thick. "I don't think I'll be great company tonight." "No, I'm coming to you. You need me, Bill. Let me come, please. I didn't want to be alone." "Okay," I agreed. "I'll be home soon. I'll see you when you get here." After hanging up, I got in my car. Instead of heading straight home, I drove to my old house. I had to tell the girls whether they wanted to see me or not. As I pulled up, I saw both their cars in the driveway. My stomach sank. I never thought the first thing I'd have to tell them would be something like this. I didn't care that I didn't live there anymore. I entered the code for the garage and stepped inside. Kathy's car wasn't there, and that was a relief. I wasn't sure I was ready to face her in that moment. The house was quiet. I went upstairs and found the girls' rooms. "Daddy," Jill called as I walked in. "What do you want?" Jenny shouted from behind her. Did you come to bag?" Jenny added with a sneer. "Well, you can go to hell," I said, cutting her off. "Grandma had a heart attack and died this morning." Both girls froze, their faces filled with shock. "I just thought you should hear this from me," I added. "Now I'm going to hell," I muttered as I turned and walked out. Jenny yelled after me, but I didn't stop. I went straight to my car and drove away. I ended up at the small lake where I used to spend so much time with the girls. The air was cold, and the water was just beginning to thaw, perfectly still. I sat on a bench and cried, not just for my mom, but for the distance that had grown between me and my daughters. Jenny's anger echoed in my mind. It was clear she didn't want me in her life. I couldn't help but wonder if I had made a mistake somewhere along the way. What had I done to make them hate me so much? Katie was the one who had destroyed our marriage. Why couldn't they see that? I don't know how long I sat there, but then I heard footsteps. I turned and saw Katie and the girls approaching. "How did you find me here?" I asked, staring at the water. "You didn't turn off the Find My Phone app," Kathy said. "Bill, I'm really sorry about your mom." "Yeah, well," I spat. "Do you regret her end? Or the fact that you turned her against me and she died without making up with me?" She didn't respond. "Leave me alone. I can't deal with you right now," I said. "I'll never forgive you for what you did to me." The last time we talked, she told me she wouldn't speak to me again until I backed out of the divorce. She didn't even say she loved me when she hung up. "I'm so sorry, Bill, for everything," Kathy said, her voice soft. I heard her walk away and then Jenny spoke. "Dad, we're sorry too. Please forgive us for being witches." I turned around and both girls rushed to me, wrapping their arms around me. We cried together a long, silent moment of grief and reconciliation. "It's not my fault, girls," I said, trying to make them understand. "Why can't you see that your mom is the reason we're not together?" "We're sorry, Dad," Jill said, her voice thick with emotion. "We just thought you should forgive her. She still loves you." "It's so obvious. Not enough to stay faithful," I replied, my voice bitter. "I'm sorry, girls, I'm really sorry," I added, holding them tighter. We embraced again while Kathy watched from her car, parked in the distance. "Girls, I need you," I said, my heart heavy. "You'll be leaving for college soon, and I'm going to miss you so much. We've wasted so much time." "We get it, Daddy," Jenny said softly. "We're not going to shut you out anymore." Jill added, "I just wish Grandma had a chance to make things right." "Daddy, can we come with you?" Jenny asked. "We haven't seen your new house yet. Maybe we could grab some pizza." "Sure," I said, smiling through my sadness. "Tell your mom and let's go." When we pulled into my driveway, I saw Missy's car. I'd completely forgotten she was coming over. "Looks like you're going to meet Missy," I told the girls. "Is she your girlfriend?" They asked in unison, making me laugh. "Yeah," I said. "I mean, we've only just started dating." "Look at you blush," Jenny teased, grinning. The girls jumped out of the car and ran to Missy's door, bombarding her with questions. I could tell Missy wasn't quite sure what to make of the situation. "Girls, give her a break," I said, laughing. "Let's carry her inside, and I'll introduce you all properly." They gave me quick kisses on the cheek and rushed off. I walked over to Missy, who looked surprised. "Sorry about all that," I said as she opened the door. She smiled warmly and kissed my cheek. "Your daughters." "Come on," I said. "Let me properly introduce you." "I must look a mess," Missy said, glancing up at me. I laughed. "You look fine. They'll like you." "Jill, Jenny, this is Missy," I called to the girls. They both hugged Missy and, as usual, cheekily said, "You're super hot." Jill jumped up and said, "Good for you, Daddy." Missy laughed, and I was too stunned to say anything. "Let's take a quick tour of the house, then I need to handle some things for Grandma's funeral," I said. "Bill, I'll order the pizzas while you show them around," Missy offered. "Sounds perfect," I said. "You're reading my mind." "Oh," the girls said in unison, their eyes wide. I shook my head as Missy smiled. I decided to wait until the next morning to share the news about my mom. I'd write an obituary for the paper and post the funeral details on Facebook after visiting the funeral home the next day. After dinner, we spent hours telling Missy's stories about my mom. The girls, in their mischievous way, added a few embarrassing stories about me to keep Missy entertained. It wasn't my fault the pier was wet. I didn't mean to fall in the lake. I defended myself. Before long, I noticed the time. It was already 10 o'clock. "Girls' time's getting away from us," I said. "It's getting late." They'd frowned. "Can we stay the night?" "I don't have the guest rooms set up yet," I replied. "Okay, here's the deal," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "I'll pick you up in the morning and we'll go out for breakfast. But if you don't mind, I could really use your help sorting through Grandma's things." "Of course, Dad, we'll help however we can," they replied. "Thank you," I said, grateful for their support. "Missy, would you like to go for a ride, or do you need to head back to Mia?" I asked. "She's with my parents tonight." Jill shot up from her seat. "Who's Mia?" "Mia is my 4-year-old daughter," I explained. Both of them squealed. "Oh my God, I can't wait to meet her," Jenny exclaimed. Missy laughed at their excitement. "I promise, soon." "Okay, let's go," I said. After we got back to my house, Missy and I sat on the couch. "They're great girls," Missy said, smiling. "I'm glad we're finally getting along," I replied with a sigh. "I just wish it didn't take losing my mom to make it happen." Missy snuggled into me, and I wrapped my arms around her. I fell asleep with her there, feeling the warmth of her embrace. When I woke up the next morning, Missy had covered us with a blanket still curled up against me. I couldn't remember the last time I felt so close to someone. I kissed her forehead gently. "Sorry I fell asleep on you," I said softly. "Mum," she mumbled, stretching. "It's fine, Patty. You've had a long emotional day. Would you like to join me and the girls for breakfast?" I asked. "Only if I can bring Mia. My parents have plans this morning," she replied. "Of course my daughters will love her," I said, smiling. I texted the girls and asked them to meet us at IOP. When I walked in, holding Mia's hand, the girls immediately rushed over to her. In no time, Mia was lifted into the air, twirling and laughing, surrounded by kisses. "I have to go to the bathroom," she squealed. The girls chorused, "We'll take her," and hurried off to the bathroom. "I don't know, Missy," I said with a grin. "Do you think they'll get along?" She playfully gave me a tap on the shoulder and kissed my cheek. "I hope it stays that way for years to come," she said. It was a little unnerving to hear her say that, considering we'd only been on one official date. But I had to admit, I was starting to feel the same way. As we sat down to eat, Mia and the girls talked nonstop. Maya asked so many questions about their lives that even the girls seemed surprised by her curiosity. She wasn't just talking about herself, she genuinely wanted to know everything about them. The girls were pros at interacting with kids. They were neighborhood babysitters after all. They knew all the best kids shows and movies, and Mia was eating it all up. I noticed how quickly she bonded with Missy too. There was no jealousy or hostility. Despite the rocky past with my daughters, they had warmed up to Missy almost immediately. They hadn't spoken to me for months after the divorce. Yet they embraced Missy without hesitation. I didn't quite understand it, and I was going to have to ask the girls about it later. After making a few calls, sorting through my mom's things, and visiting the funeral home, I finally had a moment to relax. The girls came over for dinner, and Missy and Mia had left after breakfast to give us some space. Missy didn't want to be around during the emotional stuff at my mom's house. She thought it would be too hard for Mia with all the questions while we were still processing everything. "Daddy, are you in love with Missy?" Jenny suddenly asked, her tone serious. "We've only been out a few times," I said, trying to keep it light. "It's too soon to say that," Jill raised an eyebrow. "Okay, Dad. You ever seen those cartoons where the girl looks at her prince with hearts floating around?" I nodded, chuckling as I bit into my pizza. "Well, she looks at you like that." Jill said, like she's got hearts in her head. Before I could respond, both girls looked at me and said in unison, "We like her." I went from amused to frustrated. I tossed my pizza slice back on my plate, wiped my hands, and walked to the sink to collect myself. "Daddy," Jenny said softly, "how can you break my heart all this time then? Tell me you like her. What did I do to make you shut me out, to ignore me, and tell me to go to hell when I needed you? How many times did I cry over messages you didn't care to hear?" Jill spoke quietly. "Mom made us." "What?" I asked, stunned. "It started when Mom said, 'If you want to be a family again, come back to me. We're sorry.'" The words hit me like a punch. I turned around and saw a tear on Jenny's cheek, and she rushed to hug me. "Dad, we're sorry," she whispered. "When it didn't work, Mom told us you left us and wouldn't pay for college. She said your messages were just a way to look good in the divorce," Jill explained. "And you believe that?" I asked, my voice thick with disbelief. "How could we not?" Jill said softly. "We thought you were being unreasonable." "What about me?" I asked. "Would you let your boyfriend cheat on you?" They didn't answer. "Where do we draw the line?" I asked firmly. They both started crying, and we embraced again. The weight of it lifted, and I felt anger, sorrow, and relief. "I'm sorry, girls," I whispered, holding them tight. "I missed you so much." After a while I said, "Time to go home. You've got school tomorrow. Don't forget to tell Mom about the Wakin funeral." We hugged one last time before they left. Watching them drive off, I looked up at the sky and whispered, "You didn't have to go, Mom. But thanks for bringing them back to me. I'll miss you." The wake was tough, especially since I've always felt awkward around bodies. Mom looked peaceful, and part of me was relieved she'd be with Dad again. He had passed away a few years ago and didn't want a traditional wake. He thought it was weird for people to gather around a corpse. Mom had planned everything, even picking out her own casket. I was by the front when Katie and my girls arrived. They gave me warm, tear-filled hugs. Katie stayed back, giving me space. After the prayer, Kathy placed something in the casket, a photo of the three of us with Kathy holding Mom and our babies in her arms. It made me tear up. I gently placed it next to her hands and lost it for the first time that day. Later, the priest began the prayer service, and Kathy stayed at the back, talking to everyone. You can't be part of a family for as long as she was without forming bonds. The immediate family was supposed to sit in the front row. My girls were on my right, Missy on my left, but something felt off. I looked around and saw Katie standing in the back, wiping her eyes. It didn't feel right. Mom would have wanted Kathy up front too. She was like a daughter to her. I walked to the back of the room, and people followed me. I held out my hand to Katie. "Come here. You don't need to stay back there." Katie sobbed and hugged me. "Thank you," she whispered. We went to the front, where Uncle John gave her his seat. Missy kissed my cheek. "You're a good man, Bill," she whispered. It felt strange holding Missy's hand with Kathy only a few feet away, but I hoped I wouldn't regret it. Later, as I said goodbye to the last guests, Kathy approached with Missy beside me. I wondered how Katie would react. I hoped there wouldn't be any tension. "Bill, thank you for letting me be part of today," Kathy said. "She loved you like a daughter." It was the right thing to do. I offered Kathy a ride in the limo the next day. She hugged me and cried. I felt Missy's hand on my waist, fearing tension. Katie, breaking the hug, said, "If you don't want anything from me, I'll go home." She smiled briefly at Missy. "I'm glad you're here for him. You may not know it, but he was a mama's boy. It's going to be really hard on him without her." With that, she left the room. Missy hugged me. "Let's get you home." Back at the house, Missy sat at the table with a cold beer. Things with Kathy went better than expected. "I was worried she'd start something with you," I said, relieved. "Well, the girls helped with that. We just need to get through tomorrow." I hoped she was right. I don't know why I was so uneasy about Katie. Maybe I'm paranoid. "Will you stay the night with me?" I asked. She smiled, took my hand, and said, "You couldn't kick me out if you tried." We didn't make love, but having her spoon with me was the best sleep I'd had since the divorce. As we waited for prayer to begin, Kathy whispered, "I'm not going to cause trouble." I know I lied. "I'm just uncomfortable," she scoffed. "How do you think I feel? I'm an outcast here." "No one thinks that about you," I said, trying to reassure her. Jean, my mom's friend, patted me on the shoulder. "Your mom was wonderful. We'll all miss her." After the funeral, we went to my mom's favorite Polish restaurant. Kathy seemed uncomfortable, searching for a seat. I led her to the table where Missy and the girls were sitting. "Kathy, you'll always be family, no matter the divorce. You're welcome here." She thanked me and a tear rolled down her cheek. I'm not sure when I got over the pain Kathy caused, but eventually I did. Life went on. The girls went to college and Skype with me every week. Missy and I are still together, and I'm close to proposing. Katie and I still talk occasionally, but we're on good terms. She's dating a nice guy, and I hope things work out. Some may think I should have forgiven Kathy, but I just couldn't. Maybe I'm the bad guy, but I can live with that. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.